part of the reason for me to come to stuff like this is you get the chance to compete against good guys who are like, this is your competition field. Like, this is just a small simulation, right? And you get to do, for me, I get to do things that I'm not great at in competition. So stuff like those short sprints, I get to test myself in capacities like that. Go to a competition that's going to for sure have a swim workout, stuff that I need to do. I need to do more of that in competition and have that stimulus. So it's time under tension, and it's just reps, and it's just getting more comfortable in those scenarios. Because you don't get over that. I still get super nervous about competitions, and it's funny that even recently it almost feels like worse than it used to be, just because I think there's added pressure that I put on myself, and that I think that I need to perform a certain way to meet expectations, and my expectations for myself are just getting higher and higher. It's like you watch some of your competitors compete and dominate a competition field, and you're like, hey, shit. So if I want to compete with this guy or that guy, I need to do that. And so, less than excellence becomes unacceptable. And you kind of whereas years ago I'd be like, I took 6th in this event. Like, that's great. I'm like, no, that needs to be top 3. And so I just my mentality has shifted a little bit, and it adds pressure, but I think it's not inappropriate. To me, that's just sort of the evolution over time. That's where I need to have my headspace be. Years ago, I struggled with that, being like, I don't need to push to be the best. I can just be kind of float around in there. And it's good. It gets the job done. But I think that now I'm trying to develop a bit more of a killer instinct and attack certain workouts more. And so that's just testing your capacity and testing yourself.
So what you're telling me is that your podium finishes at the games were without a killer instinct?
If you go back and look at my podium finishes at the games, they were quite safe. 2018 was a little different. And that was when I first started to kind of change my mind over that sort of stuff. But 2016, I finished top 10 in 11 out of 15 events or something like that. But I might have had 1 or 2 top 5s.
Yeah, you never tried to knock it out of the park.
Yeah, I just was safe. And then same 2017, I had a rocky start, and then was I was top 10 a lot of events. I had 2 wins that made a big points difference. But still wasn't comfortable pushing paces, I think. So just the more I compete, the more I try to do that. Going to Dubai was a good test for that, trying to lead and trying to win and trying to just be not just win, but win by a lot. Try to push down on people and just impose your will in certain scenarios. So I still feel when I see a workout that's undoubtedly plays to my strengths, I get almost extra nervous about it, because I'm like, oh man, I really need to execute on this one. And it becomes not a question of, am I able to do this? It's I'm certainly able to do this. I just have to do it. And if anything less is a mistake. So I get extra nervous about that. And I very rarely have a circumstance where I look at something and I'm like, yeah, that's a good one. And I think other people look at it and they'll be like, oh, that's a good one for Pat. But I almost never feel that way about myself. And so there's always, workouts let's say we go into the swim workout and I come out with a top 5. That's I'll feel very good about that because I had very little expectation going in. But more and more I have higher expectations on workouts. So it's every workout I think, oh man, that should be a top 3. That should be a top finish.
There was a time that when the water was introduced, it was okay, someone saved Pat Vellner's life right now.
And we've come a long way. So it's been fine. And I think this weekend too, the swim's not insane.
It's only a few hundred meters.
Yeah, it's once, 300 meters only once, I think. Yeah, it's a lot of pistols. But anyway, so yeah, hopefully my legs are fine after 300 squats today and all the assault bike. But this is what I mean about the durability test coming in, is people are going to start to fade, and then see how your legs pop after all of that.
Yeah, doing 170 pistols after doing 300 weighted squats the day before, and a bunch of lunges and a bunch of assault bike work.
I don't see how that's a problem.
Yeah, and we've got the heavy thrusters in the morning tomorrow too. Yeah, no problem.
No
to kind of talk a little bit more about the mindset that you're describing here, because I'm curious, what's that adaptation feel like once you start developing that mindset, right? Because what you're talking about is switching the way that you approach the competition of these fitness events, right? And there isn't really anything novel about the events. You've done 1,000 workouts that have all of these different types of movements and combinations and stuff in them. What's that adaptation mentally and the process to get there of, all right, now I can turn it on and not just beat but dominate the field in this workout?
When you see when you know how Matt's like famous for throwing up before workouts? It's like that. That's what it feels like. It's like, it's stressful. It's very stressful. And I think that you develop that a little bit over time, but yeah, we've done all this stuff. We've done it all, and I've tested it, but it's like a constant question where you're like, okay, like I have to do it this time. And I think my background in gymnastics was good for helping me with that, in the sense that I'm a little bit more used to it maybe than some people, but I also understand the pressures of like, you get one chance. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you did it. I've got to do it this time right now against these guys. And so you're constantly dealing with a lot of unknowns. And I think that that's a bit stressful, is when you train and you know what you can do, but when you walk into a competition field, you don't know what everybody else is going to do. And I'm not ashamed to say that I watch the competition field fairly closely. Like, I don't do the like stay in your lane thing all the time. There are certain events where it's very valuable, but I think that there's times where you can gain a lot of data and information from your competitors, and so I really try to do that. So knowing going into a competition that my success is dependent sometimes on what other people are doing can be stressful. And so I think that you come in with a number of unknowns always, no matter how well prepared you are. I come in and it's like shit. And I always find that building into a competition, I get like more stressed up until the day the competition starts. And then once you start and you can see where everybody's at and you can just like do it, that it makes it feel better. Like there's nothing else to be done. Up until the day you compete, you can always do something else to prepare. But once you're there and once it's on, it's over. Like whatever you've done is done, and you can't do anything else even if you want to. So it's just, you just have to compete and try to execute well. And execution is something that's super important. I mean, we've seen it in events now, especially single elimination events. We've got one here this weekend, the sprint at the games, the obstacle course at the games. Like, that stuff is super important and can make a massive point swing. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you're capable. It just matters if you do it now. So things like that can just be very stressful. So it can make you very anxious. So I think that it's kind of getting used to that feeling of nerves and trying to be able to use it well. And then to a certain degree, like I was like woke up in the middle of the night last night, went pee, and like had some trouble getting back to sleep because my mind was just racing. And then like being able to just reset yourself that, it doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, even if things go horribly wrong, it's not really that big of a deal. Like, I'll still walk out of here and I'll be Pat Vellner and it won't really matter. I'll go compete some more, and like I'll go home and I'll have a job and I still have a fiance.
It's like I'm still Dr. Pat Vellner.
Like it's still like, like life goes on and it's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that honestly that was an important thing for me to experience at the games this year. Was like, I up until that point had been basically nothing but successful in everything and competition wise. So to like take a bad hit and walk away, like kind of tail between my legs, and then, restart the next year and be like, oh yeah, like it's still the same. Like nothing really changed that much. Like I have one less medal in my cupboard, but like it doesn't actually matter.
It could have been one less sword.
Yeah.
Or
shield. Then I would have been probably more hurt if it was something like that. But, things effectively, like your life doesn't change that much at this point. Like I've had some success already, and so I've kind of established myself. And so there's not like that much riding on it all the time. But I still, in my head, I kind of build it up to that point. So it's kind of overcoming that sometimes and just being like, shut up, go to sleep. Like, it's fine. You'll go show up tomorrow. You'll take the floor. You'll be all right. Like, everybody else will be fit, but you'll probably be fit too. And, like, it's fine. So I think that you
lose your fitness tonight.
Yeah, you kind of get in your own
possible.
head a little bit, right? And I think that so part of that development of like how do you attack things is just building confidence that like it's going to be fine. And I think that, like I said, I envy people like Travis who just innately have that confidence that sometimes there's events that's just what you need. Is you just need the ability to just like
unwavering.
Yeah.
Big dick confidence.
Yeah, just absolutely.
You just know that you can run through a brick wall if you need to.
Yeah, and so I think that I don't innately have that, and it's something I've been trying to build towards. And I think that over the course of a competition, I pick that up in terms of momentum if I'm doing very well. But I would say I rarely, if ever, walk into a competition feeling that way. You always you tiptoe the start line in the first event, and I think everybody kind of feels that way, where you're like, fuck, here we go. Hopefully it's good. Hopefully everything I did was right. And then you just kind of dive in, and then, you make it to the surface and you're fine. But So that can be super stressful. And I think that it's just like, yeah, it's a slow build. And there's times where I wish I was better for it. But I also think that, you know, I'm better prepared as a result of having maybe a little bit less of that confidence sometimes. Is that, you know, you can be overconfident and underprepared.
Yeah, it makes you a realist.
But if you are prepared for like every bad circumstance that can come up, then you're really truly prepared. Like if you think of like, okay, well, this could happen. What would I do if this happens? Then you prepare for that ultimatum, and you know, but what if this? What if that? What if this? Like, yeah, you make yourself a bit crazy with anxiety maybe for a week before, but when the time comes, like then there's nothing else to think about. All those voices in your head that are like, well, what about this? You're like, oh yeah, then this. I already made that plan. Well, what about this? Oh yeah, then this. I already made that plan, and then you're already you're set. So like I think that being that kind of, you can be overconfident, underprepared, but often if you're underconfident, you'll come in overprepared. And I think in the past at regionals and things like that, that was always what I did. Is I like trained by myself all the time. I had no litmus test, so I'd like freak myself out, and then I'd come in and be like, "Oh, never mind, I'm good," and it was fine.
It's
but
wild. Yeah, you had one arm for one regional.
I don't need two biceps. This is fine. Yeah,
so
I think it's interesting. So the reason why I wanted to just dive a little bit deeper in there for a second is because we very rarely get to talk to athletes about their toolkit when it comes to the mental aspect of the game, right? So much of it is like, what does your strength training look like? What do your intervals look like? How much do you work out every week? But I think the adaptation that comes to the sort of like mental aspect of things is very, very not just important, but also challenging to develop. Like that toolkit is real tough.
I think that develops a lot. I think the people you typically see that have the best ability to do that, it comes from a long sports background. So I think that a lot of people develop that in sports because there's more reps. Like it's hard. Let's say now with the sanctional season, if you're aggressive, you can compete in 5 in a year. So imagine playing in another sport where you have 5 games in a year. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But like if you play in like the average sport growing up, like, you know, you play like I played lacrosse and things like that, like I play in a game or two every weekend during the season, and you deal with high pressure scenarios very regularly, and you learn to deal with success in those situations and failure in those situations, and how to deal with people and how to deal with yourself. And so I think you get better at that. And I think that some people innately are better at it than others. Watch any sport and you watch people come off the handle and do something dumb. But I think that there's a lot more opportunity to develop those skills in a lot of other sports. Whereas here, you just have less chance. So, you know, and if you're going to develop it solely through this, it's going to take you a long time.
Yeah,
so you'll have guys who take 5-year careers to then all of a sudden be like, fuck, finally I'm good.
And it's hard to realize... It's hard to realize that that's the missing piece. If you're like just starting competing and your first competition is CrossFit, you're like, man, why is that guy just so much better with dealing with these nerves? I'm scared shitless right now, and I don't even know if I can pick up the barbell. But some people just do it.
It's little things. You know, I talked with Brent a bit about it while we were in Dubai, and I think that some of the things that make us good are obvious to us, but not obvious to everyone.
100%.
So, you know, you do things like anybody who's been a regular games athlete will tell you, like, eating is something that's so trivial but so important. Because it's a 4-day competition in the heat. Guarantee you nobody's hungry at all, ever, all day. I woke up this morning, I didn't want to eat breakfast.
Yeah.
But, like, you have to do that. That's part of your job, and it's going to make you successful on Saturday and Sunday.
That's what I was telling him earlier today.
So you don't, like...
Yeah, I didn't want to eat breakfast, and Chase was like, listen, dude,
Only had a
you have to
sausage.
perform. You have to perform. You gotta eat scrambled eggs.
How are you going to do all those accessories?
How am I going to do several hundred reps of accessory hashtag trademarked? It's not, but you know what I mean.
But very much so. It's not obvious to the
but then
common person.
You go to a guy who's, you know, you grew up playing baseball. You go play in a tournament every once in a while where you're playing like 2 or 3 games in a day or something like that. Like you're used to that. Like, okay, between this is downtime, you need to rest, you need to eat, you need to do this, and then you're back on. And what it feels like at the end of, you know, a long weekend of playing repetitive efforts at high level, like you're sore, you're tired, and you have to be able to execute under those conditions. And I think that if you haven't had the opportunity to develop that and have those reps, it just like it's not ingrained in you, right?
You don't have that database.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's like if, I couldn't get back to sleep at 3 a.m. and now I have to go and compete.
Yeah.
Whereas if you did sports growing up, you're like, oh, I've done that. It
yeah,
sucks,
and like
but
I
I
said,
can
it's
do it.
just more reps. Like you've done it way more times, and you have the chance to do it, 40 times in a season instead of 5, and all of a sudden that's a massive difference. And even the context of in a single competition, we've got 7 to 10 events, but in a game and another thing, like you might have however many different moments in that game where things get a certain way and you have to make certain decisions, and it just like there's just, I think there's a lot to be learned that can transcend across different sports barriers. That if you played a collegiate level sport, like that teaches you something, right? And I think that it's super valuable, and those are skills that we implement that I think are people know about, but I think they're probably undervalued. And I think the people who do them really well are the people who are regularly successful. And it's not surprising. Like you can look at those lists and say like, oh yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it than just like looking at your background and being like, oh shit, he did gymnastics growing up. He's probably good at muscle ups and handstand walking.
Well,
it's like, no.
The reality for us nowadays is that, I did gymnastics growing up. Like the last time I did any meaningful gymnastics was over a decade ago.
Yeah.
So it's like
those aren't the skills that I'm using from that now.
No, exactly. It helped me learn some things really fast, sure, but that's not what has allowed you to remain successful. I mean, nowadays, a handstand walk and a muscle up is so trivial a skill it doesn't matter.
Everybody's got it.
Same.
But
totally. It's all the accessory work.
I did it to get here, actually. Just handstand walked from the Airbnb.
His hands are filthy. Don't take it.
At Miami Street.
I know that you've got a whole lot going on today. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Plus, the sun is starting to maybe creep over.
Yeah,
here.
it's almost. This might be the safest place.
I don't want you to burn up. But how are you going to manage that stimulus over the course of the weekend? The stress stimulus of like how do you shut down between events and come back? Like where are you going to find yourself? Are you watching episodes of The Office back to back with like your earbuds in? Like
Rick and Morty.
What are you doing here?
Ice bath.
Probably what I'm going to do is get out of the heat. Well, first thing I'm going to try to do is win some events, and that takes some of the stress away. And then
you're like $2,000. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just a little points buffer never hurt the stress, right?
Yeah.
But I think that to be successful in competition, like for me in an environment like this, I know last year I get chirped nonstop about like, oh, you got enough sunscreen on? And I was like, man, I only spent like 10 minutes outside today. I walked to the venue, I warmed up, I hit the competition floor, I went straight to my bed. I
watched that cash deposit in my bank account.
I took a cold shower and I laid in my air-conditioned bed until the next event, and then I walked out and I did the same thing. And I think that little things like that, like keeping your body temperature down, like that'll help your appetite too. It'll help you recover. It'll help you rest. And so I have some good ideas of what I need to do in terms of that. That's going to allow me to perform well. And then, other than that, I think, the stress stuff, the anxieties, you just got to kind of get out of your own way. And like I said, I'll be stressed until we start. And then, I think that from then on, the stress I experience is appropriate. I'll be stressed when I'm going into a workout that I know will hurt quite badly. I'll know if I'm going into an event that I know I need to perform a certain way, I'll be stressed. But I don't think it's an inappropriate response. You should be stressed about things you care about.
Folks, thank you so much for hanging out. I hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see even more clippy goodness, hit one of the links on the screen right now. And if you want to see the video that clip just originated from, link is in the description below. Hope you guys check some more stuff out while you're here. Enjoy. I will see you very, very soon. Take care.